So this is the long-awaited follow-up to 2019's Captain Marvel, starring Brie Larson as Carol Danvers. The titular Captain Marvel also stars Tiana Paris as Monica Rambeau and newcomer Iman Vellani as Kamala Khan / Miss Marvel. The plot's really complicated, so I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. Our three superheroes event kind of get entangled every time they use their powers. If they use their powers at the same time, they switch places. This makes for a lot of really funny scenes early on, and then they kind of have to work together and coordinate to how to like work as a team, and they have to fight against Zawe Ashton's character Darben, who there's a lot of kind of like space mumbo jumbo going on that relates to the previous film that's a little bit difficult to keep up with. But basically, the bad guy is trying to restore their planet and is taking resources from other planet, which is very destructive. And so the Marvels go after her to stop this from happening and kind of set the universe right, while also learning to work as a team. And also there's some interpersonal drama between our three characters as well. I thought this was a lot of fun and actually enjoyed this a lot more than I kind of expected to. But Zach, what are your thoughts?
So The Marvels is the 33rd film in the Marvel franchise. I also looked this up. It is Samuel L. Jackson's 15th appearance in a Marvel project, which is crazy. It's a long-standing series. This movie has to take functionally 3 protagonists and put them together. And I think, like, on its face, the gimmick of the Marvels is good. And I think that's my favorite thing about it. It ends up being surprisingly fun with 3 superheroes who swap places immediately if they use their powers at the same time. That's neat. And I've complained in the past that I wish the heroes were a little bit more dynamic. I wish I had, like, Tom Holland's Spider-Man and, like, I don't know, Loki and Hawkgirl or something. Like 3 people with drastically different powers, because our 3 here all have, quote, light-based powers. They're like electric. And that was short-sighted because I hadn't seen Miss Marvel, the show, on Disney+, and I don't really remember Monica Rambeau from WandaVision, and I did, like Andy, hardly remember Captain Marvel. But I'm really pleased to say, like, all 3 of these heroes end up being surprisingly fun. And while this movie does make me feel old in its radical presentation of like nearly all VFX shots, it's crazy how much VFX is in this movie. Like with a bouncy script and a good runtime, and Iman Vellani putting all of the comedy in this movie on her very first time in script features back. I think this movie is actually better than I thought it'd be. Not great, not bad. I think it's fine. Andy, what's the best place to start talking about the Marvels?
Well, why don't we start with our cast, and I'm going to start with Iman Vellani, who plays Miss Marvel, the kind of teenage hero. She had a show on Disney+. I didn't see it. Apparently, it ties in some, but it's not like a must-watch. But she's hilarious, and I was really surprised because I didn't really like the trailers for this movie. She looked really annoying, and like the gimmick didn't work for me, but in the movie, she's hilarious. Like, she has so many good one-liners, and she's like this person she's balancing like her family with also she's fangirling after Captain Marvel, and but also trying to be like, you know, be an Avenger and work with Nick Fury. And she's just hilarious. Like her dynamic with her family and her, like I said, her dynamic with Captain Marvel is just, she was really funny. She's a highlight of the movie. Really, I mean, puts the whole thing on her back in a whole lot of ways. And I hope we get a whole lot more of her.
Yeah, I think part of like what's tough about managing the script is having your 3 main characters who all have their own backstories. A couple of them intertwine, like Captain Marvel and Monica Rambeau have history. A couple of them have superhero names. Captain Marvel and Miss Marvel both do. Monica Rambeau does not. Like it's a lot. Plus, you got Samuel Jackson in there running around with the B plot as Nick Fury. It ends up being scattered, and the movie opens with like 3 or 4 flashback scenes, which is nuts. Like, because it has to explain our villain and our conflict. You have to give us at least a little of Captain Marvel and what her deal is. You got to explain a bit about Miss Marvel and how her powers work with this odd animated sequence that kind of works, but is really jarring and made me feel really old. I was just like, oh my God, I can't keep up with what's going on here. But once you get through that, like I think the script works because Iman Vellani plays like this young girl who is basically your comedy goof, right? She's like Chris Farley and Tommy Boy, or like Will Smith and Men in Black, right? And then your straight man characters are going to be Captain Marvel and Monica Rambeau, both a little older, both have a bit more experience, both know how to fly. Like both of them are kind of like your stand-up heroes, and then Iman Vellani is like on the back end as kind of like the teenager who's like along for the ride, but also excited to be a part of it. And it would be so easy for that to be annoying. And I don't know what writers they got to write her character. I don't know if it was her coming up with stuff on set, but her delivery and their writing works perfect, pitch perfect. And she ends up being a lot more charming than annoying. She's funny when she needs to be, sincere when she's not. Like genuinely gets probably the best scenes of the movie, followed closely by Captain Marvel and Monica Rambeau. They're both fine. I think Tiana Paris is good, and Brie Larson is fine. You know, she's stern but does a fine job. There's your three leads.
Yeah, she that's kind of the only issue is like Iman Vellani is so good, and the other two are just kind of there, and they kind of lack a lot of personality. And I've heard some discussion where some people think that Brie Larson is just like so done with these movies that she's just kind of phoning it in. I don't think it's that bad, but she doesn't have the kind of personality that you associate with a lot of heroes. That's what part of what was so brilliant in like the first three phases of Marvel, when you had Tony Stark as Iron Man was this cocky businessman, and then you had Captain America who was the Boy Scout of the team and always did the right thing, and they had such strong personalities that you could tie to their character, and we don't really get enough of that with our other two characters, particularly Captain Marvel, who's the lead of the film. So it'd be interesting to see if she still kind of sticks around after this movie.
It's funny because Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, she aspires to be like Captain Marvel, and she has her whole room's full of Funko Pops and posters, and she wears a t-shirt with Marvel Comics on it, like it's meta and fun. But it like alludes to all these adventures that Captain Marvel has had in the universe, right? When she's off world or off colony or whatever in any other movie, like she's been to other planets and done other things and been part of diplomatic relations and this goofy scene in the middle of the movie. And like, I all I kept thinking is like, boy, I sure would have loved to have seen these adventures. That would have been great. But like, instead we got one movie, and then she's just been busy and everything else that she hasn't been an Easter egg in, And like, I get it. Like this is how production works, but it just doesn't seem like there's much for this character to be a fan of, right? Like Captain Marvel is just kind of this elusive lore told individual. Monica Rambeau, you get a bit more gas because she was in WandaVision. She also doesn't get a flashback. It's just explained via dialogue how she got her powers, but I think she somehow ends up feeling a bit more grounded. Regardless, I think the one character who's really done with these features is Samuel Jackson's Nick Fury. There was a time when Nick Fury was supposed to be a serious character. Yeah, in this film, he's either sitting down or leaning in 90% of his shots. He is mugging to the camera. He's doing the Ryan
Luther.
Reynolds Deadpool. Yeah, right. He's doing Ving Rhames Ethan from Mission Impossible. Like that's how this feels. Like I couldn't believe how done with it. His face paint looks like Crayola crayon. They just like snacked on set. He was barely there for 3 days. Like he is cashing his checks, and good for him. I'm glad he's getting the bag. But they got to stop using Nick Fury in these movies. Good God, his whole subplot is, I think, probably the worst part of the movie. It's not particularly funny. It's hardly alluded to.
I'm not sure what it actually is now. That I can't really remember it. Honestly.
Yeah, it's really odd. Like, and again, like the movie's really busy concentrating on your three leads, and I should say, very, very, very in a very fun fashion, presenting this dynamic of the three of them swapping places. It starts off goofy. They're all in three different complete places in the universe, right? Like Kamala Khan's in her home, up in her bedroom, and Captain Marvel is in some alien spaceship fighting baddies, and Monica Rambeau is hanging off the side of a space station just out of orbit of Earth, like looking at a weird jump gate, which is a thing now in these movies, like big portals that enable you to teleport instantly through the universe. This is part of what I mean when I say these movies make me feel old. I feel like I've missed 5 Marvel movies, and I know I haven't missed five Marvel movies, so I don't understand where we're at, where we have like more of like a Star Trek kind of setup to the universe now with hyperspeed and jump action. And I was like, what are we doing? I haven't missed many of these. I think this is just kind of like Captain Marvel, how they've decided to move things forward in the world, right?
So that's kind of, this is a good time to get into plot, but I kind of thought the same thing. I was like, this is kind of a Star Trek plot. Like if you take away, if you take away their powers, like there is, it's a Star Trek movie because there's all this space stuff, and it's like, well, this nation and the aliens from this planet and the aliens from that planet, and
the Skrull and the Kree. Yeah, right.
Yeah, it sounds very Star Trek-y, and it's a good thing this movie is really charming and really funny and really entertaining because the plot is all over the place. Like I said, there's this big thing they got to stop the villain from stealing resources from other planets, but it's real complicated backstory of like the Skrulls and the Kree, and they're on this planet and they're on that planet, and I kind of messed things up on the planet they were on, and then this movie is actually a sequel to like 4 properties. It's a sequel to Captain America, to WandaVision, to Ms. Marvel, to what's the other one? Loki, actually, in some ways, and Secret Invasion, I didn't see. And so there's a lot of plot threads in here that kind of come out of nowhere, and they don't really go anywhere either. And this movie is very short. It's an hour and 45 minutes. It's one of the I think it's the shortest Marvel movie ever. It could have actually been a little bit longer, which I never say about anything. Like, it almost goes through the beats a little bit too quick, and we don't get enough of our plot explained. We also don't kind of get enough kind of emotional depth going on with our characters because there's some personal drama kind of happening between them as well, and we don't get enough time with that.
I should say I was impressed at how fast the movie moves through Act 1, because at some point it's like it's like action every second. Once our characters kind of start swapping places, you have like, it's probably like a 15-minute continuous action scene functionally bouncing between the 3 of them in 3 different places, whether they're fighting aliens or aliens getting pulled through one portal to another or whatever. That gimmick works great for action. It is wildly confusing to try to keep up with, but fortunately, like, we have some pretty good decisions behind the camera with Nia DaCosta, who will choose to basically keep the camera in one setting, mostly Kamala Khan's house. Like, it basically stays there with her family for most of the swapping, and so you just have your characters bouncing in and out of a fight scene rather than trying to move your audience through 3 different settings, which is wise, I think. And then additionally, once our characters get together and actually start to figure out how the gimmick works and how they change powers and whether it like carries perpetual motion with them, you get a really fun scene in Captain Marvel's like ship where they're like experimenting and they have like jump ropes and bouncy balls with a goofy Beastie Boys soundtrack. And then of course, like towards the end, you're going to have like fight scenes where our characters are bouncing between at will, like using this intentionally to fight baddies. All that's really great. That's all really solid. That makes for fun action. I think like good chemistry between heroes on screen is important, not only in their emotional moments, but in their like actual physical using their powers moments, right? It's like when Captain America picked up Thor's hammer at the end of Avengers. Like, that stuff is cool. We like seeing like other heroes use the other one's powers. That stuff's neat. That works great. Unfortunately, I also think our villain's a little rote. Not villain of the inspired. Month. Yeah, it reminded me a lot of like evil Daenerys Targaryen, like just kind of like, okay, sure, villain of the month. The Nick Fury subplot's not that great. I do think it's better than it's being perceived, unfortunately, and I say that confidently, being one of these people who's been ragging on this movie. I definitely was not that stoked to go see it, and by the end of it, I was like, okay, all right, hey, you know what? It's a pretty good effort. And that's saying a lot because it seemed like Nia DaCosta really wanted to write this one off. She bailed from production a couple months before they were done with post, which these things take a long time anyway. I'm sure she was sick of working on it. She said it was Kevin Feige's film in interviews. Andy, like, looking at kind of the direction here, do you think she was trying to get out of the way of a bullet or what? Because it's not that bad. Like, it's not, like, I've seen much worse Marvel features for sure.
Yeah. No, not at all. Like I said, we Ant-Man 3 was bad compared to this. Flash was like, I will never rewatch those. I would go see this again. I would go see this in theaters again. Like it's a really fun time. And I saw it with a pretty full crowd. Crowd was loving it. Crowd was like they're cracking up at all the jokes. Like when there's a couple of things revealed at the end, and when we get our post credit scene, people going wild. It's a fun time, and it's an entertaining time at the movies, and that's largely of what we want. It's got a lot of problems narratively, and from what I understand, it had a lot of reshoots too. But that is kind of standard for these Marvel projects. It's getting more hate than it deserves. But I hope they can kind of see the good for what it is and kind of push through it. And the lessons that Marvel needs to learn are a bigger issue than just this movie.
Yeah, I think you're right. I couldn't agree more. Any other thoughts on this for recommendations?
I think I'm ready.
Andy, would you recommend The Marvels?
I would. It was a really fun time. I was really surprised. I was not looking forward to it. I didn't like the trailer. The characters felt annoying, but when I actually saw it, it's a lot of fun. It's really funny. Iman Vellani is a standout. I think she's going to be a big deal in the MCU to come. She has so much personality. We have a lot of other superhero fun with Brie Larson and Teyonah Parris. Like I said, the plot's a little all over the place. It's a little bit of too much space politics mumbo jumbo. It feels a lot like Star Trek in places with a rote villain, but it's such a good time that you don't care about the stuff that doesn't work.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat. I think Marvel's is better than I thought it would be. Like, I really had low expectations going in. It came out feeling better. It's not perfect for sure. If anything, like it I know I keep saying it makes me feel old, but like real talk, dude, there's so much VFX in this movie. Like my eyes just glaze over. It reminds me of when I'm watching like Jurassic World. Like at some point I'm like, nothing I'm looking at matters or is real, right? I'm just waiting to get from the scene to scene. And that's not the right audience for this feature, right? Like this is not exactly who this is aimed at, but I think if you're going to see it with a bunch of people, family, need something to throw on, date night, maybe for the kids, like Marvel's is pretty good. It's definitely not bad. Definitely not bad. And I can say that with confidence because I've seen the feature. With that, we got to keep moving. My God, we got a lot to do.
Yeah.
Really quick, we need to get through a couple of trailers, and then we're going to do a mini review for Priscilla. We still got Anatomy of a Fall coming up at the end of the show, and this thing's already running long, and I know y'all's time's for something. So, Andy, please, what do we call this segment?
It's time for the trailer park.